Like to welcome everybody back to the Focus. We are now welcomed by our second guest of the evening. We have Mr. Jason Papalio. I hope I pronounced your last name correctly, sir.
Got it right. Pretty close.
No problem. An athletic recovery specialist. If you don't mind, let everybody know exactly what that is.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I work with a lot of athletes and teams in the tri-state area, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and helping them improve performance through injury prevention, working on flexibility, mobility, some sense of stability, and helping them get to a better level in a sense by, if they're continually performing at a very high level, like at their optimum output, and they're doing that 7 days a week, there's not a chance for them to continually gyrate up and down. So there's more gyration up and down when they're doing that because their body's not able to, quote-unquote, recover and come back down to a homeostasis or lower level of performance. So you need to do sort of high level, lower level to come back to get back to that higher level, in a sense. So I do work with them after practice, working on flexibility and mobility work, and I work with multiple teams or athletes on an individual basis throughout the area.
Jason, hey, it's Cardell, man. Thanks for coming on. Doing, man? I'm doing good. What led you to become an athletic recovery specialist?
Yeah, I've been doing this for quite a long time, doing performance work and training work on my end for the last maybe 10, 15 years, sort of part-time. Doing a lot of yoga work and mobility work with clients and athletes independently, and then the last 4 to 5 years I've taken it full-time on my own throughout the tri-state area, and then we connected at the Gym Couch event.
When you are brought on by individual clients or, various programs at all levels, how little is the education on proper recovery that you see?
There's not much education at all. I'd say that it's me educating them on their end. They're starting to grasp more and more about it. The pro level, they completely understand it, like in the NBA, the G League. College, they grasp it in some sense. It depends on the program or who the strength coach is or who the coaching staff is, how in tune they are with those levels. But on the high school level or the grassroots level, there's not much education at all, and then it's me supplying them information that hopefully will take them from good to great to the next level.
One thing I've seen, when a lot of guys that played on the circuits like Nike, Adidas, Under Armour circuit, by the time they get to the NBA, let's say they're one and done, it's a term being thrown around now where they say they have AAU bodies, where they kind of got the wear and tear of a 5-year vet, in the NBA or whatnot, and that's why you see a lot of one and dones. They come in, they get injured right away, and they have to take a long time off. Do you think that's specifically tied to not properly recovering, regimen when they're younger at the grassroots level?
I think it's multiple things. That's definitely one of them. I mean, now with AAU and the way everything's structured, at the high school level, you could play 75 to 100 games now.
Right.
At that elite level, you could play anywhere from 20 to 40 with your high school team, and another maybe 30 or 40 on your AAU team. And then all the rec stuff and all the preseason stuff, you could be up to 100 games. So that's just a lot of wear and tear on the body at such a young age, of just continually playing and not doing the correct performance work or the recovery work on their end. So it becomes a numbers game. So when maybe 10, 20 years ago they were playing less, they were probably doing less performance and recovery work also, but the less playing didn't add a toll to their body. Right. Whereas now, the more number of playing, like you're right, that's a pretty good stat where they say when you come into the NBA now, a 19 or 20-year-old guy comes in at like the age of 26, 27. So they say their body's broken down. And then they go from college, which plays maybe 30 games, right, to the NBA, which is now 80 games, right?
80.
So their body can't really adjust to that overnight. The G League is 50-something, and it's still a challenge to have those 20 games. but then you're adding 50 on. It takes a toll on them over time.
Okay. What is a typical program for athletes once you start working with them?
I typically like to work an athlete roughly once or twice a week. More would be better, but based on their specific needs, we'd set it up where we do an assessment where I would do a functional movement screen to assess their movement quality or their movement proficiency, taking notes based on their different movement patterns based on the assessment, and then building out a specific program based on their strengths and weaknesses. So I would do a lot of, if there was issue A, I would do potentially more mobility. If they were good stability-wise, I would do more flexibility, and vice versa. It depends on each individual client. With the team, it's a lot more generic and larger scale, focusing more on hips, ankle stability, mobility, keeping them protected, and then seeing as I'm working through each individual team member where we can assess and what the larger group needs, because a group needs would be different from an individual needs.
Right.
Right.
How much improvement is made in the performance of a player, once they, kind of get done with your program?
I'd say it's a big improvement because, one, they feel like they're freer, they can move better. Hopefully, in the end result, in a perfect world, they're performing better at a higher level.
Right.
But if I can keep them available to the coach or to the being on the court, that's the biggest benefit to them without having to go through the season where they're sitting for a week or playing at 60% because their ankle hurts or playing at 80% and not staying 100% healthy. Because if you're getting these gyrations or the body's not physically ready to play, then they can't get to their optimal potential. So I think that's the biggest thing is almost the injury prevention. And then from there, like you said, improving performance to get to that next level and just feeling like you could move better. So creating that body awareness, creating that sense of adaptability, because basketball is a very mobile sport. It's almost a sport that's played on balance and off balance.
Right, exactly. One thing I saw just checking out your work is you also focus on the mental and mindfulness aspect, the training. You have training for that. Can you break down what those portions of the program bring and how that elevates athletes overall?
Yes. There's many elements to it. I mean, try to focus on the breathing and the element of mindfulness where it's being present, which is a hard challenge, not just for an athlete, but for any average person, and being in the moment. Because the only moment you have in reality is the moment that we're having now. We're having this conversation. We have this moment. So for a basketball athlete, there's a lot of stimulation throughout the game, where there's a play and the ball goes out of bounds, or they make a bad pass, or they miss a foul shot, or a coach is yelling in the huddle. And a lot of times, the average human has about an attention span of 7 to 8 seconds. So the best tool they can use is to actually be aware that they're breathing, where they're inhaling and exhaling. And I teach them a few different techniques where we'll start a practice working together where we go over some breathing work where they're breathing into their chest, they're breathing into their rib cage, they're breathing into their stomach. And then I give them tools where there's a lot of stop and go throughout a basketball game. Yes, it's 48 minutes or whatever the extent of a game is, or 2 halves, but there's a lot of stop and go where they can pause for a moment and refocus on the now, because once anything gets distracted away from that, they're less mindful and they're not actually focused on the game, they're focused somewhere else.
Man, that's incredible, man. Yeah, I love that part about it. You work with, athletes from Nike, USA Basketball, the top grassroots, circuits. Obviously, I met you at the Gym Couch Training Showcase up in New York, and you work with Seton Hall, University of Hartford men's basketball programs, just to, name some college programs. Why isn't there more emphasis on recovery programs like it is skill development and, conditioning and performance aspect of training?
I think it's just less sexy, for one thing. Getting an athlete to sit down and say, all right, we're quote unquote meditate, or we're going to breathe, or we're going to do some mindfulness things. It's just not cool, you know, like it's just maybe not accepted as much. They'd rather be on the court that doesn't involve a basketball, so there's less stimulation for them. And even for the average person to sit still and say, okay, we're going to do this stretching session, or we're going to do some mobility work, it's like, why do I have to do that?
Yeah.
They feel like they're, not saying they're bigger than that, but when they get to the next level and their body starts breaking down, then they start saying, I need to do this. And they start seeing the benefits.
Right.
But until they're brought into it, they don't really see the benefit. I think it could be an awareness thing. It could just be their condition that from when they're young, they've had a basketball and they work with a skills trainer. And it's not the first thing to focus. And just creating the awareness for them that there is a benefit to doing it, whether we're creating a 1% benefit or a 10% benefit. You know, it's hard to prove that an athlete perform at this level based on X, Y, Z.
All right, Jason, I had a question for you. Cardell took some of my other ones. But I definitely looking over your website, one thing that really jumped out to me, aside from the mental training, I love that, by the way, sport-specific yoga. We've seen over the years, well, as of late, all across different sports, how yoga is becoming more of a regimen for athletes.
Yep.
Yours is sport-specific. Can you elaborate on how it differs from the traditional yoga or hot yoga they might be doing, and why it's so much more important for them?
Yes, completely understood. Yeah, that makes complete sense, because if you think of it, when you go to a sort of a fitness class or a yoga studio, they're moving at a pretty quick pace, and the quote-unquote term that they use in the studios is sort of vinyasa, where they're moving through these poses rather fast. Their heart rate's pretty elevated, and they're aware they're breathing, but they're just moving a lot faster, and they're moving through moderate to more advanced sort of poses in a sense, depending on what level of class you're doing. I try to slow it down for them because they're already doing that high performance training with their strength coach, their performance coach, their person on the court, their trainer. So I try to make it at a slower pace for them where they could actually slow down, be aware they're breathing, slow everything down to a level that's sustainable to them, no matter how challenging it is, and taking them back to the quote-unquote term would be parasympathetic and synthetic nervous system, where one's fight or flight, where you're rushing, going 100 miles an hour, the other's slowing everything down. And if you can get to that slower state, whether you do that for 15 minutes or 30 minutes or 45 minutes, the body gets to actually recover, regenerate, rejuvenate, and then it allows them to get back to that higher level at a later point with less and less gyrations up and down, with less and less peaks and valleys.
Okay. I guess my last question for you with your program, sure. And again, by the way, definitely enjoyed reading about each and every part of it. Is the mental training the most challenging part for your clients on average?
Definitely one of the most challenging parts. The mental aspect of being present and being here right now or being mindful is a challenge, because they're used to 100 miles an hour playing on a court, almost playing distracted in a sense, because there's so much stimulation. Mm-hmm. How do you, quote unquote, slow that down just a little bit so they could be aware of the here and now? And the breathing part, the average person takes tens of thousands of breaths a day throughout the day, whether you're awake or asleep. So during that 24-hour cycle, how many times are they aware that they're here in this moment? And that's the quote-unquote challenge of getting them to get to that moment where they're creating a moment-to-moment awareness versus the last play happened, I'm stuck on that, and that's stuck in my mind for 5 minutes, and those 5 minutes of the games that went by, versus I was focused on each detail. Every 10 seconds I refocused in.
Gotcha. Well, Jason, we just want to say thank you so much for your time.
Yes, sir.
And wish you continued success. Really enjoyed learning about your program tonight. And we've had your social media info up, so folks can definitely reach out to you, take advantage of just the wealth of information that you share. So thank you again, and you have a great evening.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate your time and continued success.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
All right, man. That was a lot of gems right there, man.
Hey man, trying to keep it coming, man. There's a lot of information out here that athletes, coaches, whoever's involved with athletics, that you can use, man. I mean, no one ever knows too much, man. There's always something to learn.